Hi, I'm Kathy Cruz. I'm a retail coach, a retail store owner, and host of the Savvy Shopkeeper Retail Podcast. I personally know how busy shopkeepers are, so I like to keep podcast episodes short and sweet. These bite-sized podcast episodes, though, they're full of value because I want to help you work less, profit more, and grow your business. This short video introduction is going to be followed by a podcast episode, so feel free to multitask, especially if you have your AirPods in. But sometimes you're going to want to take notes. And don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you get notified every time I publish a new podcast episode or a new video. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Welcome to the Savvy Shopkeeper Retail Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Cruz. We are continuing with the Shopkeeper Stories series. This is a regular, I guess I can say now it's a regular feature of the podcast where I interview shopkeepers in the Savvy community. And many of you have told me that listening to other people's stories, it's inspirational, and I get it. I also know firsthand how helpful it is to learn from other independent retail business owners. So I'm hoping to record this series definitely annually, maybe a little more frequently, just because I see how much everyone appreciates it. So we're back with the second interview of this series, and I have Bren Strickland. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, that's first. And her business is Plantstay. And Bren, thank you so much for being here. I want to say too, we just kind of covered this before I press record, but Bren is actually a newer member of Master Shopkeepers, and all of the other three shopkeepers that I'm interviewing, I know them fairly well. I've had conversations with them. We've been on group calls. But Bren is new enough that I don't know a ton about her. So I told her before we started recording, I have a million questions, but I held off from asking just because I want to, I want it to be really natural during this conversation. So I'm going to be learning a lot about Bren as everyone else learns about Bren. So Bren, if you want, let's start off just by talking about your store first. Just what kind of store is it? Where are you located? All that good stuff.
Sure. The shop is Plantstay. We're in Gainesville, Florida, which is north central Florida, about an hour and a half north of Orlando. It's an indoor houseplant shop. So we have 1,000 square feet, and it is houseplants, planters, plant accessories, plant lady things. So everything related to houseplants.
Okay. And you said Florida, right? We were just talking about that too, because right now you're on a plant shopping trip, plant buying trip, I guess, in Miami.
South Florida right now, Miami Homestead area, looking for new plants.
Nice. So normally the first question that I ask, and I'm really curious because I don't know much of your backstory. So tell me a little bit about your journey. Like what did you do before you owned a store, or is this the first kind of endeavor into entrepreneurship? Tell me about how you got to opening Plantstay, how you got here.
Sure. So my background is marketing and business development. So I've done that just, working for different companies of different sizes. I worked for Tropicana Products, which is a division of PepsiCo. So super, large company. But my sweet spot was kind of working for smaller, growing companies and, doing that marketing for them. So for the last 7 years before Plantstay, I worked for, a wonderful company here, a landscape company. Was there for 7 years and, grew that team from 13 to when I left, there was, 60 team members. So that's, some substantial growth. After 7 years, wonderful, wonderful position, but just kind of felt like it was time for a new adventure. And after that journey, just couldn't really picture working for someone else again. So decided to try, something on my own. We started out doing pop-up shops, and plants were already popular before the pandemic. The pandemic made that explode. So it really sped up our timeline for being able to open. And so we opened our shop in September of last year during the pandemic.
Okay. And what about like family life? Tell me a little bit about that because people are always curious. Like, are you juggling like 5 kids, 2 kids? What's your situation there?
So we're a blended family. Me and my husband, we each have 3 kids. So we're a blended family of 6. Our kids are older. So the youngest of them is 16, almost 17, and the oldest is 25. And we have 2 grandkids now too.
I've seen that because we're friends on Facebook. So I see the grandbaby pictures. How old are they?
They are 2 and 3.
They're so cute too. So you actually have a really I know you don't know this because you haven't heard Miriam's episode, but you have a really similar story to Miriam. She also has a marketing background. She has a blended family, multiple kids in their family, the same kind of similar ages.
Is that the chocolate shop?
What's that?
The chocolate shop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Coco Jolie in New Jersey. But a couple things I want to go back to. So how many total years did you spend in that other career in the marketing field?
Oh my goodness. So I've been doing marketing since high school. When I was in high school, most people don't know this, but you can compete in high school for publicity design for theater. So I had a state championship in that in high school. So I discovered super early on what I wanted to do, was passionate about, and pretty good at.
And then I asked this of Miriam too, like how much of that marketing experience it has been really probably helpful for your business now.
It's been tremendous, just kind of knowing everything from choosing the company name. Like I knew from the beginning that making sure we could own that on all the platforms, that if anyone across the country searches for the word Plantstay, we are what's going to come up. So yeah, I think that's incredibly helpful.
Yeah, and that's such a good tip. I recently asked that. I think it was in the Shopkeepers lab. I did a kind of an open-ended question poll about whose username is the same across the board and whose is different. And it really does make a difference because if people are searching for you, especially on Instagram, if people are searching for you and your business name, for instance, starts with shop or something else, you may not necessarily come up if they're trying to find
Right.
you. And sometimes it does.
A lot of companies have to add like the city name at the end or something, and that makes it especially tricky because I don't know where you're located to
Right.
find you.
Yeah, that's so true. I think oftentimes we just think locally, but there are people who follow our store across the world, all over the place. And then the other question I wanted to ask is about pop-ups, because I'm sure there are people listening who think like, how did you even get started in that? Do you have any tips or experience there that you can share? And of course, market events and hopefully pop-ups and all of that will really start to kick off again later this year, or maybe sooner than later this year. So what tips do you have around that for someone who wants to dip their toe in the water?
Sure. So the first pop-up that we were actually scheduled to do, it was like a little local fair, and it was April something of last year. So right when the pandemic, hit, the events all got canceled. So we wound up with like a large amount of inventory in plants that were like, okay, what do we do with this now? So it was in June of last year. We actually did our first pop-up in my garage. Like it was this super thundery, rainy, horrible day, and we sold out of plants in my garage. So we did one more event, and this one was in my driveway. And then it was like so many people were like, we probably can't do this here anymore. Our neighbors are, gonna raise eyebrows. So I just went knocking on doors, and I would show up with my business card, kind of pictures, of our staged booth. And I would go into businesses that I knew had really similar customer bases. And there was one, it's Sandy's. She's a kind of upscale clothing and home goods resale boutique here. And they were excited and said, yeah, let's try this. So we did. And that was really where our pop-ups became, really popular, and we kind of started attracting customers. So by the time we were opened our brick and mortar store, we had an established customer base, which I think was huge for starting out.
And at what point along this journey did you actually launch your website? Was it during pop-up? Like, I'm always curious. Was it like you already knew this vision, you had a website, or was it when you opened the store?
So there was an initial website. So I mean, we secured all of that before because we had our business cards done and all that stuff by the time of the first pop-up. Um, and the website, it was there, but it was more of like a postcard type site. And then a couple of weeks before we opened the store, we launched our new website.
Okay, and your website, is that a Shopify site?
It is right now Squarespace.
Squarespace. Okay.
I thought Square and Squarespace were associated.
I have to say, I'm so glad you brought this up because I'm sure you probably saw the conversation, or maybe you didn't, in the Shopkeepers Lab. Someone else asked the same thing. And I'm so glad you brought this up. For anyone listening, please know that Squarespace is not associated with Square. If you use Square point of sale, make sure that you use a Square online site and not Squarespace, because correct me if I'm wrong, but if you use a Squarespace site with Square, they don't sync. They don't speak to each other.
They don't speak to each other. You can't process your payments through Square. So we had to add Stripe only for the online payments. It's terrible. However, the website does function so much better than the Square sites. So
Yeah, and your site is beautiful, but if you probably agree with me too, if you have a brick and mortar store and then you add or have an online shop, you want them all to play really well with each other. So in the most ideal situation, if you're really tracking inventory and you want your processing to go through the same platform, you don't want a Squarespace site with a Square point of sale, right?
right. I think it also depends on kind of what your future goals are. So for us, our goal is for the online store to be independent of the brick and mortar. So they won't be tied inventory systems. They'll be our, online inventory and in store.
Oh, all right. This is going to be a really good conversation. I would love for you to expand on that, because there are so many shopkeepers who say that they want it all their inventory managed in one place and they don't want separate inventory systems. I don't recommend it either, but I guess it just depends on the business and why you're doing that. So can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. It's honestly to manage the inventory. So we turn over the plants in our shop weekly. So that's about, 20 to 30 cases of plants each week. So to manage that on the website, so when we restock, for example, on Friday mornings, by 1 p.m., we're sold out of some things in the shop. That's, so it's really tricky to be able to sell online if you're selling that quickly. So we want to maintain separate inventory, also some different plants that are available only on our website. So kind of, for reasons like that, to be able to focus. Also, people who are looking for shipping from a plant shop, like what they're looking for is a little bit different. So we just kind of want to customize those offerings to the different targets.
So enlightening. I don't think I've ever had a conversation, but it totally makes sense. If you do have such quick and high turnover, that would be really hard to manage. I'm so glad you mentioned that. You just, kind of showed me a different perspective or a different reason why maybe you wouldn't want the two to sync. So it really does make sense for your business. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then I want to go back to when you said the pandemic really blew up the plant industry. Can you tell me a little bit about that and why do you think that is?
Yeah. So my last industry was also landscaping. So also, very plant related. So everybody is suddenly home with, less things to do. So plants were already on an incredible upward trend before the pandemic hit. And then when it hit, all those people who were sort of already starting to really get into plants, focused on your home, make your home more enjoyable. It gave, plants really bring a lot into an indoor environment, just kind of a sense of calm, something to do, something to take care of. And, we're in Florida. I don't know if this was, in how many states, but nurseries were an essential business. So that's one of the things that never closed. So it just sort of, I don't know, was kind of all the right ingredients to make that really explode.
Okay. No, it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense, especially if for those of us that are listening that have home decor stores or furniture stores, kind of the same thing. Everyone was home. I did it in my own home. I redecorated at least 3 rooms, nothing major, but things that I could DIY and things that I actually had time for. And it was really nice. I did not bring in a ton of plants because my sister and I always joke that our mom and you're Puerto Rican too? Is
I
it?
am.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that our and we call our mom Mamita, that Mamita has the green thumb, but we do not. But I love plants. I actually have, and I've been meaning to show you the picture of this tree because I keep thinking like Bren will tell me how to take care of this tree. I don't know the name of the tree. It's sitting next to me in my office. It's beautiful, but it's like wild and I don't know how to tame it. But I'm surprised that this thing is still alive. But I get it. I get that so many of us wanted to make our homes feel like home, our houses feel like home since we were spending so much time in it. And did your love of plants come from somewhere else other than working with that landscaping company?
Yeah, I've always loved plants, and what you said really is kind of explains why Plantstay came to be. So it was, when I really got into plants, like I've always loved them. My mom was fantastic with plants, my grandmother, but I think that gene sort of skipped me. And so my way of taking care of plants was I'd go to my mom's house, there'd be a gorgeous plant, I'd take it home, I would bring it to like near the brink of death, and then take it back to her and get another one. So it's been like a journey of learning to care for plants, mostly by trial and error, killing a lot of plants to get really, good at it. I have 150 plants in my personal collection in my home. And so when I was really, we bought this new house a few years ago that had fantastic lighting, and that's where everything kind of really exploded. Like, I want every plant inside. But there was nowhere that I could go to ask the questions or learn about plants other than, the huge wide internet, which is super different if I'm looking for a plant to care for in my home in Florida versus someone in the state of Washington, so the advice and tips that you get is so broad. So starting Plantstay as a brick and mortar was really about providing a space where customers can come and learn about the plants, learn about the care tips, and we call them recovered plant murderers. There's a lot of us, and so that's sort of our sweet spot. So our staff, we call them plant parents, and they all have great knowledge on plants so that they can provide them.
I love that. So you're saying there's hope. There's hope
There's
for
hope. There is.
me. Now that kind of leads me, now my mind starts to race. Like, do you have resources on your website? Do you have a blog? Or is all of the knowledge and the helpful information, is that mostly like an in-person thing that you offer in the store?
Sure. It's all of those things and expanding, but really in store is where you get that kind of maximum that impact. And we're really working to expand. I mean, we're 7 months old now, so still pretty new. So we're building up that, online resources. Reels is something that we want to kick off with some of that, knowledge in there.
Yeah, I, for some reason, could really see you blowing up the internet with a blog or with video. I don't know why. I know why. It's because I see the way that you interact in the group. And it's funny because how long have you been in Master Shopkeepers? 2 or 3 months now?
Mm-hmm.
And your engagement and your questions. I was so curious about your background, and now it's all starting to make sense. But I could see you doing really well on an online platform in addition to the brick and mortar. I want to go back a little bit. When you were talking about pop-ups, you kept saying we. So I'm always curious about like family and family support and who took this journey with you and who either supported you, because there are so many times where we have significant others or family members, good friends sometimes, who like help us get those pop-up shops going and carry all the heavy things and do some of the work for us so that we aren't completely exhausted. Who was on that path with you?
Sure. Primarily, my husband. My husband and I have worked together at different companies for years, for over a decade. So when we worked together at our last company, and I went to him, I was like, "Hey, I kind of want to leave here and start a plant shop." And he was like, "Well, if you're sure that's what you want to do," and that's just kind of the level of support. So as we're
Uh,
dragging boxes, hauling plants, pretty much everything that we needed, and building the store. That was a fun journey. So it was a space that had been inhabited by a company for 20 something years, and they'd done no improvement. So we had to sort of take everything down. We signed our lease August 1st, and we opened September 3rd while working both full time that time. And my husband did 95% of the work. We brought in an electrician, and otherwise he did the work. So definitely my partner.
Are you? That's incredible. I love that. Are you still working full time?
No, no, no. So
Okay.
I stopped working full time a week before we opened the store.
Okay. I
And
was
then, yeah,
start
then
by giving you high fives.
he left that company in December of last year and also started his own business. So,
Okay.
well,
Is he also, does he also have a brick and mortar store, or is his an online business?
service based.
Okay. And then, oh gosh, I just drew a blank. You said something and I lost it. Oh well, I'll come back to it. Um, and oh, I know what it was. You said you opened in August, and you literally opened in August, the year of the pandemic.
Yeah, September, but yes.
Okay. And when did you actually start to lease the space versus when you opened?
We leased it 1 month before.
Oh,
We
wow.
built the store in 1 month.
Yeah, you did the whole build out in a month, and you were both working full time.
Correct.
And I'm sure people that are listening, like, yeah, I did that too. I mean, there's so many of us that do that. The same. I was working full time when my sister and I were working on our build out and doing all of the things. But I think it's been so many years since then, I forget that I did that too. And I'm sure so many other people listening have done that. And I'm sure you were exhausted. I'm sure your husband was exhausted. It shows the passion that we have for our businesses, right?
Absolutely.
So, the next thing I want to ask is, like I mentioned, you've been in Master Shopkeepers for a few months now. How did you find Savvy Shopkeeper? What made you join the group? Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. A lot of searching. I was seeking out a group like this. So in my last organization, it was part of, we called it the leadership team. Just, it was a 5-member team that kind of helped steer and make decisions for the organization. And I've just always worked really well on a team. And, like self-employment is great, but we all need a place to have some accountability. Um, and so that's really what I was looking for. Plus, it's really hard to brainstorm, find people to collaborate with locally when there's that sort of competitive element. So just seeking out more people who are sort of walking in the same journey, had insights to share.
And what have you found since you've been in the group? Like, what are some of your favorite parts, or what is your favorite part of being in the group? I would love to hear that.
So I think, gosh, there's just so many, but really the resources, being able to sort of ask a question about, hey, what are you guys finding that works for XYZ issues that I'm struggling with right now? And, getting those answers, or, hey, check out this, thing in the guides or in the lab, or, finding those resources.
Yeah, and I laugh because every time, for those listening, every time Bren, like literally since the second she joined, every time she would ask a question, I had something to link to. I'm like, here, watch this video. Here, read this. Here, look at this lesson. Here, watch this masterclass. And I'm sure you were probably like, can you just give me the answer? But in a way, I want to just give a really quick answer, but I don't want to discount the value of the content and the lessons,
Sure.
because there's a reason why the master classes and some of the video lessons are as long as they are. There's so much in them. And there's so many times that I just can't answer a question in sometimes I can answer in 1 or 2 sentences. but it was like every question you asked, I was pointing you in a different direction. And I hope it didn't frustrate you. I meant to ask that. Like, I hope that didn't frustrate you. I hope you at least found that helpful.
Yeah.
And it's reassuring because I can tell you have so much experience and I can tell you're also like a bit of a lifelong learner. You're constantly learning. You always want to improve things. So I appreciated that you answered the questions, but hopefully I didn't frustrate you whenever I did that.
Yeah, the
Okay.
only thing like that I felt was missing is sort of, so it was great to have those answers of where to find it, but it was hard to find that answer on your own of where is like there's such a amount. And I know some sort of index would also be another time consuming project, but that would be the only thing.
Yeah, and I will say now that we've added the podcast episodes to the lab, and that the lab in the academy has the search function, that has made a big difference too, because you can just search a keyword like profit margin, and now it'll pull up every single article, podcast episode, anything with the words profit margin. And that wasn't the case before in the academy. And I was so happy when the platform that I use implemented that, because it really makes a difference. Like, I don't want, and the one thing I say when people join Master Shopkeepers is I don't want them to be searching something for 30 minutes. Just tag me in the group, ask, and I'll point you in the right direction, or my virtual assistant will. I don't want anyone wasting time looking for resources or helpful articles.
But sometimes you find other interesting things in those searches. So,
So true. Or even searching the groups.
oh yeah, I do that a
Yeah,
lot.
I search the groups a lot for answers to questions. So, where do you see your business in maybe 5 years?
So our goal, so we have right now 1,000 square feet, 0 back room. So everything we receive goes directly to the shelves. So my goal is to have not necessarily more square footage for retail, but a greenhouse space, an outdoor garden, maybe an event space, small weddings, things like that is really where I'd like to see Plantstay evolve.
Ah, that's interesting, because what you want to design or provide services like plant services? Would it be like rental? What would you do for weddings with plants?
So it would be a space that's beautiful enough.
Ah, an event space.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. I love that idea. And how have you started searching for that? Is that going to be challenging to find in the Gainesville area?
It will. There's a few spots that I've kind of, I'm keeping an eye on, but that's still, probably 2 to 3 years away.
Mhm.
That I can see that happening.
And do you plan on opening? Do you want to open? Like, I always wonder, would you like to open locations across Florida? Are you happy with one location? Is that enough to manage?
We're going to do, so the plan is to do just the one brick and mortar and then hopefully a greenhouse where our shipping would expand from.
Okay. And how do you source your plants? I'm always curious with actual live products.
For sure.
Do they get shipped to you? Do you find them locally? Do you partner with greenhouses?
So our original plan was to grow all of our own plants, and we learned really quickly that we could not grow that amount of plants. So we do partner. We have about 20 different nurseries that we source plants through. We also do some importing internationally for some of them, or rare, hard to find plants. So those are the ones that we get shipped. But I live in Florida, so it's there's a lot of house plants being grown here. So really fortunate in being able to have access to that network.
Yeah, I guess the climate does make a difference. And I'm guessing building relationships is probably really important there too, if you're working with 20 other local businesses or vendors.
It's huge. It's huge. So we go in person once a week is our plant shopping. And so we go in person to all of these stops. We have, a truck and a trailer, and we bring back our haul of plants. So we
Once a
pick
week.
our plants once a week.
Wow. That's incredible. My sister and I have talked about this on podcast episodes before. Like we go to market once a year and we try to knock out, the majority of our buying for the new home items that we carry in the store. I can't imagine having to do that once a week. Although, is that fun for you? Do you enjoy it?
I really do. So I enjoy it up until 6 p.m. when we get back to the shop, because then we have to unload, and we basically reset the store every week. And so that's what we do at the end of plant shopping day.
That's fun. And when you say we, is that still your husband that goes with you?
That is
or
my
two
husband,
members?
and yeah, that's my husband and me. We go and do that.
That's great. And where would you rank yourself now if you're not the plant murderer? What's your real title?
Plants. I'm really good with plants. So I'm at the stage where I'm super comfortable helping people pick out plants and care for them. And even if there's, pest issues, when you start out, you're like, oh my goodness, pests? No, I can't do that. And I was like, oh no, we can take care of that. It's all fine.
Yeah, I picture some really witty infographic or something like that where it takes you on the journey from like plant murder to
that's great.
Plant expert. I could see you doing something like that. Well, thank you so much. I've learned a ton about you, and I was really looking forward to this just again because I see how much you engage and contribute to both groups, and I really appreciate it. I've loved learning your story. It all now starts to make sense. I would love for you to tell everyone where can they find you, where can they find you online, and where can they find you on social media so they can follow you. I will say I love following you, even though I'm not the best plant caretaker. I've learned some things. So where can they find you?
So our website is plantstay.com, and we're most active on instagram.com/plantstay, and on Facebook it's Plantstay Love. So we did miss one.
Darn it. It's hard to nail it and get 100% on all the platforms. And Plantstay, just to make sure people know how to spell it, everyone spells things differently. It's PLANT, plant, stay, STAY, plant, stay. Bren, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. Are you heading off now to go buy plants right now?
Now things get fun. We go pull up and see how many plants we can find.
Do you and your husband like make a date night of it too? Like, do you go off and explore different restaurants or anything? I've seen everything.
Yeah, we got here yesterday, and so last night we were in downtown Miami, just kind of looking around, exploring. So yeah, so we do get to make it fun too.
Well, good. And what's your husband's name? Shout out to him for being so supportive and kind.
Steve.
Steve. Okay. Bren, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great buying trip, and I will see you in Master Shopkeepers.
Thanks, Kathy. Bye.
Bye.